Ladies and gents, it's been a long wait, but it is finally here. Today marks the start of Euro 2020 in 2021. And I'm delighted to be joined once again by my co-host, Sean. Sean, how you doing, mate?
Not too bad. It's nice to be here in the A State of Mind studio. Feeling
Yeah,
quite comfy here.
and you can see what team we will be supporting this summer. Whoever you're supporting, leave your comments in. We're live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter just now. And we have an action-packed show for you this evening. We will be covering each group, and we'll have an expert for each group. Starting, first of all, with a face who you may have seen before. He is part of the football CFB team, which Callum McFadden is a part of. Callum, who is normally on the Football Insomniac. He's been off the last couple of weeks, but he'll be joining us once again. And joining us tonight to tell us about Group A and about the chances for past semi-finalist Wales is James Rees. James, how's it going?
Shmai boys, how's it going?
Oh, look at that. He's cracking the Welsh out already, Sean.
I have no idea what he said. Hopefully it improves throughout the rest of the segment.
It's like the Gavin and Stacey episode where they go, "Oh, I'm Hughes."
Yeah.
I wouldn't bust that accent out again, Colin. I would leave.
I know that was probably a bad one. We'll keep it at that.
We'll get on to the football maybe, and I'll start off by asking you, James. We want to look forward, and we're here to preview Euro 2020. But you can't talk about this Wales team without reflecting on that incredible run to the semi-finals back in 2016. So could you maybe share your memories of that, and then also tell us what's changed in the years since then? How's that team shaping up compared to that side who went on that fairy tale run the last tournament?
Yeah, it was fantastic, wasn't it? You know, it was something that we'd, especially people of my generation, had never really kind of experienced. You know, it was 58. You know, it was a huge weight. So just getting there was the magic, and nobody could have expected the way the tournament would have panned out for Wales. Obviously, there's been a lot of change. We missed out on the qualification for the World Cup. Cookie left. It's been a fairly up and down qualification with kind of off-field issues as well as a lot of playing retirements. You know, Giggsy was very much set on bringing in new faces, and maybe that's put a couple of experienced heads noses out of joint. So we did see kind of players retire and kind of step back, but it's exciting. There's loads of exciting players. There's players come out of nowhere, and kind of Kiefer Moore, he was a fairly surprise addition and seemed to come out of nowhere. So it's been pretty exciting, and just to get to another major tournament is just in such a short spell is just amazing, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned sort of the off-field stuff. It means that Rob Page is now the manager. What can you tell us about him? Because he's a name that's not known too much, I think, in the sort of like general sort of public consciousness. And how do you expect Wales to sort of shape up under him?
I think Page, Page he's a Wales international. He knows the setup. He's kind of come up through there. The Welsh FA's got a really good coaching setup. Osh was fantastic, who worked under Cookie and kind of led all the coaching, the coaching education side of things. So, Pagey is quite different, I think. He seems to have changed a few things. Kind of Kiefer Moore played such a big part in qualification, and Pagey seems to have kind of come away from that. It'd be interesting to see who kind of starts up front for Wales in the tournament, whether it is kind of Kiefer Moore or whether it's kind of Harry Wilson again, kind of like a false nine role, which Pagey's been playing with. But it'll just be exciting. I think it doesn't really matter who plays for Wales. Together stronger is the moniker, but it's more than that. It is, when players come to play for Wales and pull on the shirt, they play out their skins. We see endless amounts of players who play for the country who go far beyond kind of the levels that we see at club level. Hal Robson-Kanu was pulling out Cruyff turns against Belgium, and he's hardly had an amazing. He's never lit up things at club level, and there's a ton of players in the setup again that kind of always go above and beyond when they pull on a Wales shirt.
Yeah, Sean was mentioning about Euro 2016, and it's scary to think it was 5 years ago now. Looking ahead, obviously you reached the semi-final in that competition. what's the expectations within the camp? Where do you think they can get to? Do you think out the groups is the achievable bit, or is it maybe trying to replicate the success of 5 years ago?
I think it's always going to be tough to replicate such an iconic kind of achievement. And we've got a tough group. I think you can't deny that it's a tough group. Italy, probably it's one of the best Italy sides we've seen in a long time. Turkey as well. When I was younger, Turkey were a big international side, and they've kind of got a dark. A lot of people are kind of naming them as a dark horse for the tournament this year. So I think we've got a chance. I wouldn't want to kind of over-egg our chances and rule out Switzerland because they're a tough side too. So, but I'd like to think we'd get out of the group. I think teams this year are probably in a better shape than some were maybe in 2016, and we had a lucky run. And if we can replicate it, it would be amazing. So, but just being there and kind of breaking that stigma of falling the last hurdle. That's the biggest achievement of all, really. So we've got that opportunity to just be there again and bed in a new generation of players and get them used to, big tournament football.
How important do you think that first game tomorrow against Switzerland could be? Because like you said, Italy are coming into the competition very hot. They're 27 games unbeaten and fantastic record there on. Turkey are a lot of people's dark horses really rising up. And Switzerland are, like you said, a very talented team, but they seem to sort of struggle in international tournaments. I think you have to go back to World Cup 1938 for the last time that Turkey won a knockout game in a major tournament, which is mental to think considering the talent they've had over recent years. So do you see them as kind of your biggest competition to sort of maybe just pip third, because we know that third 4 times out of 6 in this tournament will get you knockout football?
I think kind of PG has spoken in the run-up this week that, a result's not important against Switzerland, but I think it is. We only have to look at Slovakia, that game. Well, not even the game, that Ben Davies save in the first game of 2016 was massive, and it just set up everything. They set up the mentality and kind of settled the nerves. And I think that first game is going to be big for us. I think, if we're going to get out of the group, Switzerland, we're going to have to get something from, and hopefully Turkey. You can never tell with Italy. I think, it depends how we turn up, and probably a lot of it will depend on what Gareth Bale we see as well. But I think tomorrow is huge for us.
What Gareth Bale do you think we might see? Because he didn't have a very consistent season at Spurs, obviously. In the latter weeks of the season, he scored a few goals and got in on the act, but do you think he'll step it up for Wales and really be that talisman for you this time around?
I think, he's an important player for us, but we've got a lot of important players in the group. He's not been consistent, but he's actually probably had more game time for Spurs than he's had in a good few years at Madrid. So, he looks good. He looks fit. He has been firing. He's been pulling off some important kind of performances and setting up goals again at Spurs. So, I think the Gareth Bale we're getting at Euro 2020 and 21 is probably a better Gareth Bale than we would have got if the tournament had been on last year. So I think we just settle that we've got a good, hopefully informed Gareth, and that he can stay fit, because he's had a horrible time of injuries as well. So.
And we know a lot about your sort of Gareth Bales, your Aaron Ramseys. Are there names sort of slipping under the radar that might surprise a few people on this Welsh side? Who do you think might come out the tournament with sort of a higher stock than they have coming into it?
I think there's so many players who maybe aren't not even kind of cutting it at club level that always just go above and beyond for Wales. Ethan Ampadu is always superb for us, where he's never had a real kind of breakthrough campaign at club level. Joe Morel is always good for us. He's a fantastic player in midfield, and he's not even playing for Luton. So players like that always do well. Kind of some of the young defenders at Swansea. Ben Cabango's been really good for us. I guess probably it'll be interesting to see how Kiefer Moore goes. Kiefer Moore has been so good for us, but it's whether he's going to start, how he'll kind of cope against some of those more solid defences. So it'll be really interesting to see how he goes on. But there's always going to be a name that pops up for Wales that maybe isn't going to cut it. Always, I can't go without saying Chris Gunter will do something.
There we go. You promised mentions, you got it in.
Yeah.
So
Always
James,
rely on Dad to do something.
looking at the table before we kind of wrap up, because we're sticking to 10-minute slots for each guest tonight. How does Group A finish?
Italy top, Turkey second, Wales third, Switzerland fourth. That's what I'm going to go for. I would take that.
Do you know, I think it will be a close one between Wales and Turkey. I think, as you say, they're a very vast improved side and an exciting side to watch. And we hope that we see Wales come out the group stage. Always good to see a home nation doing well. So, James, once again, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Any last words you want to say, and you want to plug where we can find you on social media?
Sure. I'm at James Reese 90. You can read my stuff on Football CFB, and I do a lot of coverage for Australian football. So you can find me at Kick360 AU as well.
We might get you in to discuss the Ange Postecoglou move to Celtic. Maybe for another
definitely.
show on the channel later on.
I was waiting to see if I could crowbar it in.
But James, thanks very much for joining us this evening. All the best tomorrow.
Yeah, cheers, boys.
One group down, 5 to go. Sean, we ready for our next guest?
Let's get it going. We'll move on now to Group B, and joining us to discuss Belgium and the group as a whole is Scott Coyne. Scott, thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing?
Great to be here. How you doing, guys?
Not too
Great
bad
to have you
at
on,
all.
mate. Great to have you on.
I feel like there's a narrative getting pushed with Belgium, so I'm going to get the big questions are out the way. Is this Belgium's golden generation's last chance at a major tournament?
I think the general feeling in Belgium is that it probably is, certainly for this group of players. The really good news, aside from that, is that the generation coming up behind this one are pretty good as well.
Yeah.
So, the Belgian national team and youth development in football in Belgium more generally across the football landscape is pretty healthy. But as far as this group of players is concerned, I think this is their last shot at a major trophy, definitely, yeah.
And some sort of disappointing news from a Belgian perspective today came out that Axel Witsel and Kevin De Bruyne haven't travelled to Russia for the opening game. How much of a blow do you think that might be, especially in that midfield area?
Well, I think it's not been much of a surprise to anybody. I think it's been a kind of open secret for a few days that both of them wouldn't travel, and it was just kind of confirmed earlier today. I think they've been planning for at least the last week and a half, certainly for neither of those to be around for the opening game. And there's a possibility that, certainly in Axel's case, that he might not make an appearance until the final group game. If at all, but I think they'll join up with the rest of the squad kind of quite soon. I think it's just to give them another few days together and keep them wrapped in cotton wool as long as possible.
And something that's maybe not getting discussed too much in sort of the wider discussion of the Euros is the fact that the makeup of the tournament and it being across the continent means that certain sides get home advantage and certain sides don't. And for Belgium, it's quite a tough ask. Their first game is against Russia in St. Petersburg, and then the next best team in the league, in the group, they play Denmark in Copenhagen. Is that sort of something that's been discussed a lot in the Belgium camp? Is Roberto Martinez feeling at all fazed by that prospect of facing predominantly home fans?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's something you just have to cope with at this level. I mean, the one thing about this tournament is I think it's going to be much harder to win than previous Euros. And it's going to be much more open and unpredictable because of that, because of the increased travelling and the fact that, it doesn't take place in one country. So you don't have that one base that you would normally have. So there's more travelling, throw potentially, the unknown COVID factor in, different sizes of crowds as well. I mean, some of the games are going to have pretty decent sized crowds, some are going to have pretty small ones. So I think it's just something they're going to have to manage effectively if they're going to go all the way, or even close to all the way. I mean, I think the games in St. Petersburg are going to have around 35,000 in, which is pretty good.
That's massive when you consider that we've been playing in front of empty stadiums for the last 18 months or so.
Yeah, there's a curious thing in Russian football where for quite a while now they've had pretty significant crowds in, well above what they should have had as well. A lot of the club sides, were having 15,000-20,000 above what were the kind of agreed levels, so it was pretty much open doors, and we'll say nothing about it, which is interesting. But yeah, I think there'll be about 35,000 in St. Petersburg for the game tomorrow night, and then around 15,000-20,000 in Copenhagen, I think. So pretty decent. But the Belgian squad's actually on average the oldest at the tournament. So you would hope that would, and certainly I'm hoping that kind of counts in their favour and not against them. It could go either way, really.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. On you go, Colin.
Oh, no, sorry, I was just going to say, we're speaking about, obviously, the travelling. When you look at the groups overall, I think it's safe to say in Belgium's case, they got a fairly decent draw. I mean, you're looking at it against Denmark, Finland, Russia, teams that traditionally would have been seen as teams that would struggle to get out the group stages. Belgium's fancy must be that they finish the top of this group. And if they finish top of this group, am I right in saying that they could face Scotland if they finish third?
Yeah, it's possible. That's another thing that complicates this whole tournament again, is that if they win Group B, then they'll be set up to play one of the best placed, third placed finishing sides, which could be Scotland and could be almost anybody. So kind of plotting your route through the tournament, I think you really just can't. You can't give that any time. You've really it's the old cliche about taking one game at a time and see where you go, really. But that's quite an exciting addition to the mix for this tournament, actually, I think.
Who do you see as Belgium's biggest threat in this group? Because like Colin said, they're maybe not traditional powerhouses, but Russia had a good World Cup in 2018. Denmark certainly have some talented players in midfield. And this is Finland's first ever major tournament, and they kind of come into it with sort of the opposite narrative to Belgium. It seems like this is last chance saloon for the national team. They really need to pull it off. Whereas Finland will be there, and anything will be sort of considered a success. They'll be trying their best to sort of really make an impact on the tournament. But it might be an easy draw for Belgium, but there's sort of little trip ups there potentially for the national side.
Yeah, I think they have to take each game kind of seriously. I mean, they know the Russian side very well because Russia were actually in their qualification group and finished kind of second behind them. In fact, I think they've played the Russians 3 times over the last couple of years and scored 10 goals against them. So I don't think the Russians really hold much kind of fear for them. It's a little bit different when you're going into their backyard, of course, to play a major tournament. That's complicates things a wee bit and gives them a slight advantage, I suppose. I think Denmark are probably the biggest threat to them. I think technically they're the next best side, and I think they're the side most likely maybe to take something off Belgium in the group. But I think the expectation is to win the group. And to probably win all 3 games. That's what they'd be looking to do. And hopefully by the time they come round to the final group game, they're able to give some players a run out that haven't so far in preparation for kind of later in the tournament. That would be the ideal scenario.
Scott, talk to us about Romelu Lukaku. I mean, he's the name on everyone's lips at the moment. I've seen a couple of people putting him on for top goal scorer at the tournament. Is big things expected of him this time round? And why is everyone so behind him now? What's kind of led into this hysteria behind him?
Well, he's just, I think when he's really on his game, he's absolutely unplayable. As most people will know, his all-round game is just outstanding. And he's a very adaptable player. He can play in a number of systems. He can play up front on his own, or he can play up with somebody. Belgium, because of how strong they are offensively, tend to play him up front on his own and rely on the wide men to kind of pitch in as well. And because of the kind of double pivot system that works in the midfield, that allows players to kind of get into offensive positions as well. So, you never know quite where you are when you're playing Belgium, to be honest. They're very, very strong offensively, and you need to be kind of wary of more than just kind of big Rom, to be honest. It's interesting because I think, the main worry for the Belgians actually is actually the defence at the moment. it's a world-class defence, but it's the weakest part of the team in the sense that the age is a worry. I mean, you've got players in there like Alderweireld, who's 32, Vermaelen's 35, Vertonghen's 34 now, and the one thing we don't really know is how are they going to respond in knockout games against sides who have really passive, creative front line. You know, if they come up against the Portuguese or the Italians or even England. How these guys going to respond to that, because they've not really been tested. So we need to see how that goes. But Big Rob's, coming back to him, is pretty untouchable. And I think most people fancy him to potentially finish as top scorer for the tournament, you know, whether Belgium win it or not. And I think that's a pretty good shout.
It's prediction time then, let's hear it. So like your Group B, 1 to 4, and then how far do you think Belgium will go in Euro 2020?
All right, I think Belgium will win the group. I think the Danes will finish second, then Russia and Finland fourth. And I think Belgium will get to at least the semi-final. And in all honesty, if they don't, it will be probably considered a failure of a tournament if they don't. So fingers crossed they can go one step further than that and bring it back.
Oh, there's a lot of ashes to be thrown aside from the last tournament, considering how Robson-Kanu turned that Belgian defence. But Scott, it's been a pleasure having you on. Good luck for the first game, and hopefully we'll catch up with you later on in the tournament.
Cheers, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Take care.
2 down, 4 to go. Would you like to introduce our next guest?
Here we go. So we're moving on to Group C now, and join us from the UKRFUT 24 podcast, we have Shakhtar Donetsk English.
Oh,
I'm speaking
that's
Ukrainian
easy to say.
I got the letters right and then this wrong. Shakhtar Donetsk English language commentator. There we go. Adam Pate. Adam, thank you very much for joining us. And that's probably the worst introduction you've ever had in your life.
No, mate.
There's been
Cheers,
worse ones.
guys. Cheers, guys. Thanks for inviting us on the show, though. It's pleasure to be here. Just listening there to Scott and the great podcast, the Belgian Footy guys, what they do as well. So all credit to them. Looking forward to the tournament. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. And looking forward to the tournament, looking forward to the football. But for Ukraine, there's been sort of off-the-field conversations this week. We have to get that out the way. I don't want to get you involved in too much geopolitics on the Football Insomniac. But if you could maybe just sort of tell us what's going on this week for anyone who missed it, and if you think it could have affected the Ukrainians at all.
Well, I mean, first of all, just kind of hot off the press in the last hour, it's been announced by UEFA that the slogans are allowed to stay on the kit now. So to go back to the beginning, last weekend, the Ukrainian Federation presented the kits for the tournament. And on the front of the kit, there was the map of Ukraine with the UN recognised borders of Ukraine on it. And then inside the collar of the kits, there were two phrases that resonate quite deep, very deeply within Ukrainian culture, going back through the centuries to Taras Shevchenko, one of the key figures in Ukrainians' past. I'd close neighbours, and we won't mention them too much, but they were a little upset and lodged some quite ludicrous complaints to UEFA, who sadly decided to listen to them first of all. And there was, about 24 hours ago in particular, there were some very clear instructions from UEFA to remove those slogans from inside the pitch, inside the kit, inside the collar. And overnight, it's all kind of been a sort of a whirlwind 24 hours. First of all, the Federation got UEFA to accept that these slogans and the Ukrainian symbol of arms, the trident, is an accepted part of the Federation's sort of ideology. It goes on their website and it's linked to everything to do with the Football Federation. And in the last hour, it's now that UEFA have agreed that, within the last hour, it's been announced that they will now allow it to stay on the kit. And what and Andrei Pavelko has said is, well, now that it's allowed on the kit, we're actually going to have it on the front of the kit instead of hidden in the collar. So what the complaints have actually done is provided us with a great opportunity to showcase Ukrainian identity and Ukrainian culture at a greater level. Now, you asked briefly what it's done to the people. And now what it has done is took what is a nation that loves football and very passionate about football, and now it's whipped the country up into a real frenzy. We've seen across social medias over the last few days, nothing but real sort of a patriotic fervour, just building up and building up and building up. We've seen the British Embassy in Ukraine doing big presentations in all the kits. We've had the American Embassy. We've had everybody showing their love for Ukraine over the last sort of 48 hours. And going into the tournament, hopefully it's really going to build the momentum. I know in some of the press conferences, Shevchenko said, we're trying to keep it to one side, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be very hard. All right, politics done.
Yeah, there we go. How about we talk about some actual football?
And, that's what we're here for.
I guess if we have to, we will. And it's impossible to talk about this Ukrainian side without talking about Alexander Zinchenko. He'll by far the most sort of high-profile and well-known name, especially on these shores. So can you tell us a little bit about his role for the Ukrainian national team and how highly regarded he is in Ukraine?
I mean, over the last 12 months, he's exploded, with the work he's done, the performances at Man City. His prominence has really grown. He's become this part of this power couple. He's married Vlada Sedan, and who's one of, a big celebrity out here. And but his role in the Ukrainian team is very different to his role for Manchester City. He plays in midfield, plays in the heart of midfield. In the last warm-up friendly against Cyprus, we saw him drifting out more to the left. And there's a lot of talk in the camp that we're going to see him play that sort of left midfield role. Now, the Ukrainian midfield plays very narrow. And it's kind of a sort of a left central one of the three is where he plays. He's the captain. He's the talisman. He's going to have a real key role in this tournament for Ukraine's success. But for me, he's not the most important in the team. We're talking about Malinovsky, we're talking about Yaremchuk further up the park for Ukraine. They're the guys that we really need to perform in this tournament. Malinovsky's going into it as, incredible hot form in Serie A. He got the most assists in Serie A after the March international break. He's, most informed central attacking midfielder over in that league, and incredible talent. We know that Premier League clubs have had a look. We're hoping he stays in Serie A next season because we're really seeing him develop into a world-class talent there. Yaremchuk was in Belgium last year. I got his goal tally, 20 goals, because I do forget it at times. But it was 20 goals last season, 34 games, in the Belgian Premier League. Real, he's going to be key. He got a goal in the last warm-up game, and hopefully, if Ukraine are going to progress well, we need him to have a good tournament because goals is the biggest problem facing this team going into the tournament.
And how confident are the Ukrainians about having a decent tournament? I mean, in the group, you kick things off against Holland. They'll be your sort of toughest challengers, you would imagine, back at their first major tournament for the first time since the World Cup in 2014. But, I mean, Scotland fans watched them a few weeks ago. We were disappointed to come away with a draw in that game just. It wasn't a fantastic performance at all by the Dutch. So what's the mood like? Do you feel that you can certainly get out the group, and then what happens after that?
I was talking about this over the week, and I've said quarterfinals, but then I went and had a closer look at the draw. And second in the group goes to London to play the winner of Group A, which is the Italy group, first of all. And that is going to be a real tough game in the round of 16 if second place. Third place will play the winner of one of the groups, depending how the draw sort of pans out. And honestly, I mean, round of 16 is the expectation. Quarterfinals is the hope. It will be dependent on the draw of how the tournament pans out. If we get a good draw, we could replicate 2006 with the Golden Generation and get through to the quarterfinal of a major tournament, which for Ukraine, we'd come away very, very happy with that.
And we're asking everyone for it. So could you give us your group prediction and then a final rubber stamped how far Ukraine going in this tournament? I know you can't turn the draw.
You got 30 seconds to make it up.
No, I mean, in all seriousness, it's going to be very, very tight between Holland, Austria, and the Ukraine. But I'm going to say Holland first, Ukraine second, Austria third, North Macedonia fourth, with us going to the quarterfinals. I'm confident we're going to pull a shock in the last 16.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very
20
much.
20 seconds.
There we go. We smashed it. And after that absolute shambles of introduction, that was a lovely segment. So I'm glad we recovered from that. And thank you very much for joining us. We don't want to let people know where they can find you on social media and all those sorts of places, Adam.
Yeah, sure. It's Ukrafort24 on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We've also got the Ukraine Plus Football podcast that goes out twice weekly. We'll be going out throughout all the tournament. You can find us on Audio Boom and Spotify and Apple.
Adam, great to have you on. Thank you very much for joining us. And good luck for the tournament.
Same to you over there. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Care.
Bye-bye.
And now it has been 23 years, but finally the Tartan Army can boogie. And boogieing with us tonight is Clark Giles. Clark,
Gillis.
how's it going? Gillies, sorry.
That's
Jeez,
all right.
do you know what? I'm picking up Sean from a couple of minutes ago. He had a bit
blame
of a
me.
stuttering. He had a bit of a stuttering intro, so I'm claiming that one. Clark, finally, the Tartan Army have something to boogie about, and it's been about time.
Oh, it's been far too long. I mean, first couple of tournaments you miss out on, you think, oh, lick your wounds, it's always next time. But kind of got hard and hard, and I think in 2016 when it was England, Wales, Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, we were left at home. I think that was when it kind of sunk in, or we might never qualify again.
Looking at the group as a whole, obviously we've got the game against the old enemy, a game against the team who made it to the final of the World Cup in Croatia, although you could probably say they've maybe deteriorated since then. But the game that everyone's talking about is the first game against the Czech Republic, and that is the game that everyone's hoping the 3 points that might just be enough to get you through in third are secured. Do you think that's the focus then? Work on the Czechs, try and take something from the game down at Wembley, and don't leave it to the last day.
I think you can only work at one game at a time, really, and I think it's the best attitude. I mean, we've been quite lucky this time. Euro 92 and Euro 96, we had the two hardest teams the first two games, so you don't know where you are come the third game. This way, it's on paper, it's the easiest team first, and you're thinking 3 points, and that could be enough in the bag straight away to get your best first place spot in the next round. See what happens at Wembley, whatever happens there, that's a bonus, and it's a case of we know our destiny's in our own hands in the final game is Croatia.
Yeah, and I think Scotland fans will be delighted looking at it to see that it's a group that doesn't include Israel, because we've been playing Israel every game now for the last 5 years. But it is, as we said, a very tough group, and that last game against Croatia could be what decides Scotland's future in the tournament. Having those, 12,500 fans at Hampden it's going to be, how important do you think that is for Scotland, just having that support behind them?
I think it'll make a really big difference. I mean, I think it gave Luxembourg a little boost that there was Luxembourg fans there for the friendly recently, so that was only maybe 1,000 or so. So I mean, there's 12,000 tickets, so work on the basis that there's only going to be maybe 11,000 Scotland fans. That's still 11,000 Scotland fans in Hampden, and that's going to be an atmosphere no matter what you say. So I think the team coming out to that and roaring them on, that'll just give them that little extra boost, I think.
And looking at the squad, there's certainly a lot of experience in there. Where do you think the biggest selection headache will be for Steve Clarke? Would you think it's probably in the middle of the park?
I actually think probably his biggest headache is going to be who's the third man in the back three, really. I think the midfield basically picks itself. I think up front it is going to be Dykes and Adams, because they've pretty much gelled quite nicely together, and Dykes got a very good bit of form towards the end of the season, and Adam, I think he's been the missing link piece of the jigsaw we've been needing. But it's the back three. I mean, you could say one of any maybe 4 or 5 combinations. I mean, you would assume it would be Hendry, Hanley, and Tierney, but you could also say that Gallagher's very unlucky not to be in that. You could also say Cooper. I mean, top half Premiership defender. I mean, who are we to turn our nose down to a player like that?
You take a look at it though. I mean, we expect McTominay to move forward this tournament. We expect him to play in the sort of midfield role, whereas in previous teams he's been playing towards the back. He's kind of played that centre half role alongside Tierney and alongside, as you say, a number of people that's played in that third position. So moving him into the midfield, and this is where I was kind of going with that selection headache. You're looking at guys like McGregor, Armstrong, McTominay, McGinn. There's only going to be so many places now. It's great coming off the bench, but picking the right two for the right opposition, I think that could be a real headache.
Yeah, well, I think the reason he's having to move him into midfield is because we're missing Ryan Jack, who's basically the quiet man of the team. I feel doesn't get enough credit. I mean, he keeps things tidy, and I think against Austria he was a big miss that we really missed out on. So I think it's not really a headache that he's going to have to move somebody forward who's into his natural position, really. So it should be okay there. And I think the only maybe if he might have in his mind is do I drop McGregor in place of Gilmour, because it looks like that came into the conversation of late. But I don't think he'll go for that straight away. I think he might save Gilmour for a later game.
Yeah, I've got to say Gilmour looked very impressive in his performances in the warm-up games. Going back to the goalkeeper though, now a lot of people have said that the gloves are sort of in the middle between Marshall and Gordon at the minute. If you were picking the team, who would you have in the net? Do you stick with the guy that got you there and was the penalty heroic, or do you go with someone who's probably in a slightly better form than Craig Gordon?
I think you've just got to stick with Marshall, really, because I think he got us there and you got to be fair to him. He hasn't let us down that much, to be honest. I mean, he lost his place with Derby towards the end of the season there, but I don't think he's been that bad with Scotland of late, really. So I'm 80 to 90% sure he'll start with Marshall in the next game. And if Gordon gets any game time, I assume it'll be the Croatia game if we lose the first two games, unfortunately.
Yeah, Sean. We've got to have that mentality. Yeah. Sean, looking at the squad, I mean, there's obviously some noticeable absentees that we spoke about, Ryan Gold being one of them. But I've got to say, this looks like one of the strongest squads that we've had in a long, long time. Now, Sean, as far back as I remember, maybe at a push 1998, this will be the first one that you remember?
First one I've been alive for. It's 23 years since a major tournament. I'm 21.
Well, there you goes. And Clark, when you look at it, the expectation level is continuing to rise across the country. How far realistically can Scotland go in this tournament?
I think we can do very well. I mean, it says something. You've got an element of the English media that are kind of envious that we've got two left backs and we've got a midfield that can boast Gilmour, McTominay, and McGinn. So if they're thinking that, then you must think, we must be onto something. So I reckon we've got enough to get at least the 3 points against the Czech Republic. That should hopefully be enough to cement third place, a best runner-up, third place. So confident we can get into this last 16, and then it's just a case of if we can get real lucky and get the likes of Poland or something like that, or Ukraine, that could actually avoid in something like France or Italy, and you're thinking to yourself, that's an option that could get us into the next round again. I mean, you just have to look at Wales in the last Euros and what a little bit of momentum does to you once you get out the groups. Yeah,
and I don't think there's anything that would ever bounce back on Steve Clarke. I think his job was to get Scotland to this tournament, and a lot of the sort of English press were saying that they think that this will mean that Scotland can play with a bit more freedom, because nothing's expected of them. It's their first tournament in 23 years. They can go out and try to impress. Do you think there's anybody that people haven't been speaking about so much in the press right now that has the ability to go out and be the surprise package for Scotland at this tournament?
Really, the fact everybody's talking about squad says that just how good it is, especially in the English media. So I think that's who could just surprise me. I mean, if anyone's going to cause a surprise, I could see the boy Nisbet being the surprise breakthrough in the team. I think he's been kind of under the radar a little bit because really he's only in the squad because McBurney was injured, and then it was just he came in very late into the. I mean, he was only involved in the last squad really, so he just kind of came in very late, and I think he caused a surprise. Especially with the 5 substitutes, so that's you're able to bring out good amount of players off the bench, and he's probably one of the top ones you can bring off the bench when likes of Dykes or Adam starts tiring late in the game.
Yeah, the Didabide comes in to say Nathan Patterson. The discussion has been at the minute who plays in that right back role. Would it be O'Donnell? Would it be Patterson? Who do you think Steve Clark will go with? Do you think he'll go with the experience?
I think he'll stick with O'Donnell because I think that's his boy. He knows what he can do from Kilmarnock. He's stuck with him by Scotland. I did think Palmer was a little bit unlucky to miss out in the squad, but you can't look past the form Patterson's been in since he broke into the Rangers team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a selection headache all over, I think, for me, and that's only because we've got such a good squad, and I think the positivity that's throughout the country right now is a great thing, and we all look forward to the first game on Monday against the Czech Republic. Clark, we've been asking everyone, so we need to get your predictions, but I'm going to throw an extra one in here. I'm going to throw in, where do you think Scotland will finish in the group? How far will they get? And finally, how are we going to win on Monday? What's the score going to be?
Right, first one, Monday, I think we'll win 1-0. I've got a wee sneaky suspicion John McGinn's going to pull up with another one at Hampden. That, as I said, should hopefully get us minimum third place. It's just a case of, is it good enough? And if it is good enough, I do think we are strong enough that we could get into the next round. And then it's a case of what comes next. And I've got a feeling that there's going to be a lot of tactical thinking in this World Cup. So I think England are going to be the same thinking. You saw at the last World Cup what tactical thinking for them did. They effectively came second in the group, and then the whole English media said, "Oh, that's our clear road to the final now." So I think there will be some tactical thinking that some people will think, "Oh, it's maybe better to finish runner-up than it is to finish top." So we could find ourselves finishing second out of nowhere. Then I do feel next round, as good as we can do, quarterfinals, I think, do really well.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone is here for the journey, just like you were this evening, Clark. Thank you very much for joining us on the Football Insomniac. All the best to Scotland in this tournament, and if we get out the group stages, maybe we'll have you all back on to see how far we'll actually get.
Right, cheers.
Cheers, Clark.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
4 down, 2 to go, and the next man joining us has written for Marca 442 and is part of La Liga Showdown. He's here to discuss Group E and Spain's chances at the tournament. Welcome to the Football Insomniac, Sam Leveridge. Sam, how are you doing?
Hi guys, how are you? I'm good, thanks.
Yeah, great to have you on. We are here on what is the opening day of Euro 2020. How is the feeling in the Spain camp at the moment? What are they thinking? Are they looking to try and win the tournament, or is there a bit of a sort of expectation that this is a slightly younger squad and it's just a case of taking it game by game?
Yeah, a bit chaotic really. I'm not sure if you've been following that Sergio Busquets, the captain, tested positive for COVID at the weekend. So Everything's been kind of thrown up in the air. And this week in Spain, all of the build-up has had nothing to do with the tournament, nothing to do with how far can Spain go, but a lot more with who's actually going to be playing for Spain in the first few games. So I think in general, people aren't expecting Spain to go as far as they have in the past. I don't think anyone's expecting Spain to win this year. I think it's very much kind of a transition tournament, and they've seen that Luis Enrique is keen not to call upon the Sergio Ramos and the more experienced players. And he is looking to those younger guys. So there's very much kind of a feeling they could be a dark horse, maybe with these younger players who are very talented, but they're not kind of the veterans with experience who know how to win tournaments like this one.
Do you think that's something that could come back to bite him? Not picking someone with the experience of Ramos now. Maybe he wouldn't play every single game, but surely it's good to have someone like that in around the camp.
Yeah, I think I was surprised. And in terms of actually playing, if you just look at it, the bare facts, Sergio Ramos has only played 90 minutes once in 2021. So you can see why you wouldn't want him in your squad. And Sir Luis Enrique as well was keen not to take all 26 players available to him. He said he only wanted 23, 24 to keep some competitive nature in training, that kind of thing. So Sergio Ramos, is it better to leave him at home or better to take him and leave him on the bench for every game? I guess that's the question. So I was surprised that he left him out because of the whole kind of leadership that Sergio Ramos brings to the squad, and also because the press are going to tear Luis Enrique apart, whatever happens if they don't win, purely for leaving Sergio Ramos out. It's a big call and a controversial one, but he's the kind of manager who's made those big decisions before, and he's happy to kind of take the criticism and take it on the chin and explain his decision and stick with it.
Sam, you mentioned some of the youthful talent there. Who should we we be looking out for in the tournament? I mean, I personally have loved watching Pedri at Barcelona this season. Is he likely to feature for Spain this tournament?
Yeah, I don't think he'll be starting, but I think he will be kind of coming on, playing a big role from the bench, and he's a very, very exciting young talent, still a teenager. He's been a regular for Barcelona this season. I think this tournament could be one where he could really kind of make his name on an international level. Then another one who's not too well known is Dani Olmo, who's Leipzig, and he's been fantastic for them in Germany, and also for Spain with the national team. He's been pretty good when he's had chances. Ferran Torres, another young guy who Man City fans all know and love, and there's somebody that's kind of got real talent and real pace. He's quite an exciting man to watch when he's in form in attack. So quite a few different young players throughout the Spain squad who this is a real big chance for them to establish themselves.
Looking at the form of David De Gea this season, he's been in and out of the Manchester United team. Everyone's heard the record about him on penalties, and Simon has been taking the gloves. Do you think that's something that will continue throughout the tournament, or do you think that Enrique will maybe go back to the tried and trusted of De Gea to get him through?
No, I think it will be Unai Simon who kind of has the number one shirt throughout the tournament. He's had it for the last few qualifiers and Nations League, the last few friendlies as well. So I expect he'll be the first choice for Luis Enrique. He's a young guy. Last season he was superb. This season he's had a few mistakes, a few dodgy moments, but not as many as David De Gea. I think Luis Enrique, kind of like with Sergio Ramos, he sees him as the long-term option to go for Simon, and David De Gea is a good backup, and there aren't too many talented young keepers in Spain at the moment. So to have Unai Simon as number one and De Gea still kind of providing that backup option.
We can sorry, Colin.
Go on, you go,
say to Sam, we can make use of his La Liga knowledge to talk about a player in one of the opposing teams in the group, and that's Alexander Isak of Sweden. He scored 17 goals, the 21-year-old for Real Sociedad this season. And how big a threat could he be for Sweden in this tournament, especially in the absence of Zlatan Ibrahimovic?
He's huge. I mean, for me, if there's one player, at least a La Liga player, who could kind of really show themselves to the world in this tournament, it could be Alexander Isak. He's been brilliant this season. I mean, he's setting goal-scoring records for Real Sociedad, and they've been pushing on in Europe. He's a player who's very big, tall, big physically, a big physical presence, but he's very quick, very technical as well. He's not just kind of a lump it up to him kind of striker. He's really got some technical ability. He's a great finisher. He's very much a form player. So he'll go on runs of 4 or 5 games where he scores 2 or 3 goals in every game, and then he'll go 4 or 5 games without a goal. So tournament football could be perfectly suited to him if he kind of hits form early on in the tournament, and Sweden can really rely on him in attack. Then that could be a big name to look out for this summer.
Yeah, and obviously, Sam, the first game for Spain is against Sweden. Do you think that is what will set the tone for Spain in the tournament? If they drop points there, then potentially this is one of those ones that they could be seen as the surprise package to fall out early on?
Yeah, I think Spain have always had a bit of a tradition of not starting tournaments off too well. Even when they won the World Cup, they lost the first game. When they won the 2008 Euros, they lost the first game. So I think there'll be a lot of pressure on this Spain team, and there's a lot of concern as well. I mean, they had their COVID vaccines today, and a lot of the players that came out, Thiago, the Liverpool guy, who came out and said that he was a bit concerned about secondary effects if they're a bit tired over the next few days. So it'll be interesting to see if that has any impact. But then I think with Spain, I mean, Poland in the second game, they definitely had their first 2 games are the 2 toughest games. Slovakia, the third game they've got. They'll be hoping to pick up 6 points and be home and dry by that last game and can rest a few players. But Sweden is definitely the one where you think they'll be fighting for top spot in the group.
And the big one, as you say, no Zlatan for Sweden. We've got Isaac up front. But for Poland, Robert Lewandowski. I mean, any team that has Lewandowski in it, that's a team that you fear coming up against. And for me, I think they're the team that could really surprise quite a few people at the tournament.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Poland are going to be a real challenge. And I think if you look at it in that way, I think there's more of a threat of Poland damaging and hurting Spain than Sweden. I think Sweden are possibly the more balanced squad, but I think Spain will be quite happy to retain possession there and sneak a goal or two and see it out. Whereas Poland, I think there's always that threat with Lewandowski that he can score at any time. He can create something out of nothing, and then all of a sudden, Spain are behind and they've got to score 2 goals. And Spain aren't the most prolific of teams at the moment with Alvaro Morata up front. He's not in the best of form either. His performances in the friendlies have been questionable, to say the least. So, yeah, I think with Lewandowski is kind of exactly what Spain most fear in this tournament.
But, I mean, you've got to say, when you look at it, Spain, they seem to find a way to get things done. And you only have to go back to last year and that victory over Germany, and everyone was really feeling as if this is the rebirth of Spain. Maybe we're just underplaying it. Maybe they'll go on and have a great tournament, and it's just one of those teams that you think, oh, it's Spain, so they're going to beat this team, they're going to beat that team. But this is a squad that's in transition, and this is the future generation of what's to come for Spain.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's some really bright young players in there. I mean, Pau Torres, who won the Europa League with Villarreal this season, is an excellent centre-back. Aymeric Laporte as well, who's just transitioned from France to Spain as his national team. Marcos Llorente, another player who'll probably play kind of a right wing-back role, won the league with Atleti. Koke, another big player. I think their big issue is going to come up in attack, and against Germany, they just couldn't stop scoring. I think now, in the last few games that they've played, they've struggled to find those goals. If they can kind of boost Morata's confidence, if Jared Moreno gets a run in the side, then maybe that will be this kind of role for Spain to explode and be the dark horses.
Yeah, and it's one we'll definitely keep an eye on. Sam, before we let you go, we've been asking everyone for their group predictions and how far they think their country will go in the tournament. So, your turn for Spain.
I reckon Spain will come out top in their group. I think maybe Poland will be a bit of a surprise and finish second in the group ahead of Sweden. And then Spain, I reckon, will get to the quarterfinals, maybe the semi-finals at a push, but I don't think they're going to be winning.
And tell everyone where they can find you and your writings.
Yeah, sure. So at Sam Leverage on Twitter, and also you can give us a follow at La Liga Lowdown for all the latest from the Spain camp.
Yeah, and it's been great having you on this evening, Sam. And hopefully we'll catch up with you later on in the tournament, and we'll see how Spain are getting on if they make it out the group and they aren't the surprise package.
Fingers crossed.
Thanks very much, Sam.
Thanks, Sam. 5 down, 1 to go.
Just the one.
Just the one. But, I mean, it's a face that will be familiar to those that are regulars here on A State of Mind. All the way from Hungary, Kevin McCluskey. Kevin, thank you for joining us this evening. I know it's been a bit of a rush day for you, moving house and still managing to come on here tonight.
That's right, Colin. It's anything just to chat with you.
It's not just me. It's not just me. Sean's here as well.
I'm here.
He's the real reason I'm here.
That's what I like to hear.
Oh, but Kevin, we've got to talk football. We can talk about the rest of the stuff later on, and that's why you're lying in bed. But let's take a look at Hungary and the group, which is the group of death. There's no other way to look at it. I mean, Hungary, Portugal, France, Germany, 3 of the best sides in the world, and then Hungary. What's the feeling amongst the Hungarians at the moment?
Do you know, I think they're quietly confident that they can do something in this group. Like as you said, it is a group of death. You've got the current European champions, you've got the current world champions, you've got Germany, who are always there or thereabouts. But Hungary's going into this tournament on the back of, I think it's 11 games without defeat. Mm-hmm. So I think only Italy's got a better record than them going into the tournament at the moment. They've got the first 2 games kind of at home at the Puskás. And I think it's 100% capacity they've got there. So you're going to have best part of 70,000 Hungarians in the stadium cheering them on. So
that's crazy to think, isn't it? 70,000 at a game of football. It's been so long since we could say that.
Exactly, it has been. And they've been gearing towards that for a long time here. So they're ready to go for it. They've got no fear going into it because of the underdogs. They're kind of expected to finish last. So I think that gives them a freedom that they can just go and play their game. And like as I say, they're quietly confident that they can maybe just pull off a shock.
And like we said, sorry, Colin. It's a group of death. There's so many talented players, world-class players in this group. But who from the Hungary side will we be looking at coming out the tournament and saying he's a better player?
Well, if you'd asked me this a few weeks ago, I'm going to tell you it's Dominik Szoboszlai. He's the star man of the team. Recently moved from RB Salzburg to Leipzig, but he was unable to make the squad. He pulled out at the very last minute through injury, and he's really their one potentially world-class player. So without him being in the team, what they're very similar, I would say, in makeup to Ferencváros. in that they're just a very good team. They're a good unit, a lot of good players that just work well together. If you're going to press me on names, I'm going to say you're going to look at somebody like Laszlo Kleinheisler in the midfield. He's scored quite a few kind of spectacular goals for Osijek in Croatia this season. Then possibly players coming off the benches is where you're looking at, again, impact subs like Philip Hollander and Daniel Gazdag. They're two boys that have got just that wee bit of ability that can pull something out the bag when it's needed. But otherwise, it's a guy that's not really going to set the header alight with his performances, but the main man now is going to be Adam Salai up front. He's a big target man playing in Germany. He's a skipper as well, and he's a real national hero, kind of guy that just pulls the team together. So, I mean, he'll be the focal point of the team.
We spoke about Scotland earlier on, and a lot of people saying that the pressure's off for them because it's their first tournament in 23 years. And do you think that's the same sort of feeling with Hungary as well? Is that not the fact that it's their first tournament in 23 years, but the fact that they've been drawn in such a tough group that it's just a case of just go out and play and just enjoy it and take it from there? And at times when you play like that and the pressure's off, that's when you get some of these surprise results.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And that's definitely the mood here. That the pressure's off. They don't have a Scotland in the group, a team that's comparable to them that they would expect to get something against. So they're going in expecting nothing from the games. As you say, it gives them that freedom. So that's where their sort of quiet confidence comes, that they could be a surprise package.
Is there any team in that group that you look at and think they are sort of more susceptible to a shock result, that Hungary might be thinking there's a little sort of weakness there that they could exploit and Hungary could pull off a fantastic result?
Yeah, I'm thinking in the opening game actually against Portugal.
Yeah.
I just think it's a game that they could potentially catch them quite cold. And as I say, it's the first game that's going to be in Budapest. There's 70,000 Hungarians in there. They're going to be up for the game. So I think that's the one where potentially they could get a win. And if they do, that gives them such a springboard going into the game against France.
Yeah, we've seen sort of recent results. I mean, everyone's waxing lyrical about Turkey at the minute. Everyone's excited to see how they perform against Italy today. But Hungary beat them 2-0 quite recently. And then the 3-each draw with Poland. So it does show that Hungary might be one of those teams that you've just got to keep an eye on. And I think that game against Portugal will be massive. As you said, 70,000 fans. When's the last time any of those players got to play in front of 70,000 fans? And see, when they're not on the ball, the abuse that's going to come from the side of the park, it's enough to put even the most seasoned professionals off. And a lot of questions are around Cristiano Ronaldo and how much he will be involved in this tournament. First of all, do you think he will start against Hungary? And how much of a miss would he be if he wasn't to play?
Whether he'll start, I've no idea, to be perfectly honest with you. I haven't followed much of the build-up from the Portuguese side, so I don't know whether he's in the running to start or not. If he doesn't start, I think Portugal will probably just cope without him, because I think they're beginning to do that now. They won the Euros the last time without him in the final. So it sounds strange to say it, but he probably won't be that big of a loss.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, they've got incredible strength and depth. You're talking about Bruno Fernandes, Diego Jota, Silva. But as I said, these are the teams that are coming into it. They've not played in front of a big crowd before. Hungary have that opportunity to go out and give them a real surprise. So it will be one of the most interesting games, I think, in the first round of games to see how that goes. Kevin, we've asked everybody else, so you are the last man up. How far are Hungary going to get, and where do they finish in this group? I mean, that could easily be solved by you saying they finished last and that's it, but I mean,
it's going to be braver than that. You can tell it's going to be braver.
I know, I've got a wee feeling there.
Aye, I will be braver because I want to leave the house and be able to walk the streets here for the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to say France will top the group, Germany will be second, Hungary will get third place and qualify for the knockouts, and the Portuguese will go home.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
European champions finishing bottom of their group. I love it.
Yeah.
Has it ever happened
Yeah.
before? Has it ever happened before? That'll be one for the.
Did it not
Stars.
happen to Italy? It was world champions. So not in
I'm not
Euros,
sure.
but I'm sure they won the World Cup and they went out in the first round. The next,
I'm not sure, but it's definitely going to be an interesting one. We're
yeah.
all so excited for the start of this tournament. It starts tonight. It's Italy versus Turkey. It's been 23 years, Kevin. As a Scotsman in Hungary, you must be every bit as excited.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm getting questioned this all the time. Is like, if it's Scotland against Hungary, who would you support? How, which one of the two nations am I supporting here? It's a no-brainer. It's Scotland all the way. I remember the last tournament. I was in my modern studies class, and the day of the game against Brazil at France 98. I remember the day very well. So I'm looking forward to the opening game, and hopefully
What's
getting a
good?
3-pointer.
What's good to see across the country is you see schools that are saying we're going to show the game on Monday at 2:00. The TVs are being rolled out, the projectors are being pushed down. Sean, it's like it must be a dream right now. Imagine that.
I know. I mean, I've never got the chance because we didn't qualify. But I'm so excited. I was saying I've got nothing to compare it to, but to see Scotland in their first ever major tournament, waiting all these years, I really just cannot wait.
It's fantastic. And do you know what? It's been great having a perspective from each team in the group ahead of the group stage games. We'll maybe try and get this back together when we get round to the round of 16. Maybe we'll have a head-to-head with the two teams that are facing off against each other. But Kevin, thank you very much for joining us. Tell everyone where they can find you on socials and where your stuff is all published.
Cool, yeah. Well, thanks for having us again, Colin. If you want to follow me, you can on Twitter at Kevin McCluskey1, and occasionally I will write for HungarianFootball.com, so you'll find me there as well.
Kevin, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll catch up with you very soon.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Well, Sean,
there we go.
I don't know about you, but that's just made me every bit more excited for this tournament.
I want to get away from you and get home for the opening game.
I don't blame you, and I think everyone else in the comment section will want to do so too. But before you go, do subscribe to the channel. You can see it at the link below. Give this video a thumbs up, and after it's finished, leave a comment. That stuff really helps us. And we'll be back with another edition of the Football Insomniac really, really soon. But thanks everyone for joining us. And until then, take care and stay safe.